JT Shaver here with New Layer, and today we'll be taking a look at a light that I might just choose over any other Godox light. The Godox SZ150R is a full-color Bowens mount zoomable LED light with some unexpected features that might make this the most versatile light out there. And they included an upgrade that I consider to be the future of LED lights, which I'll show you a little bit later. If you've been watching my reviews for a while, you know how excited I was to see that this light does come with a carrying case. It's similar to the case for the ML and VL series of lights, which is great. For the cost of this light, I think it would have been a huge mistake not to include a case, and it would have made me very, very angry. The design and build quality of this light is similar to the other new Godox lights we've seen, like the SL Mark II series, which is a good thing. The materials are great, the yoke is nice and strong, but there are some differences on the back panel. I'll get into all the different modes on this light a little bit later, but there are a couple things that I wanted to touch on quickly. One is that the knobs on the back of this light are slightly different than the previous lights and make controlling this light really easy, and they just feel a lot better. The second and bigger upgrade on the back panel of this light is the screen, which is huge, high resolution, and full color, which just makes this light a pleasure to use. You'll see a USB port for future firmware upgrades, but what you won't see are the two hidden RJ45 connectors. These are on the side of the light under a little panel and are for DMX control, which is a first for Godox when it comes to their Bowens mount COB lights. The power input on this light is a 36 volt locking XLR connector, which means that the AC adapter is going to be separate from the head. In a perfect world, I'd love to see the AC adapter integrated directly into the head. But I can see how that would have made the head too big and cumbersome, so I'll give Godox a pass this time. Because it does have a 36 volt input, you cannot use NPF batteries or V-mount batteries, but you can still make something like a portable power station work if you had to. They do include some Velcro V-mount adapters to hang the AC power brick on a light stand, which I think is a must-have with any light that does not integrate that directly into the head. On the side of the light next to the angle adjustment knob, which has a fancy new color spectrum design by the way, is the new zoom knob, which works in a different way than you might think. This light does not have a focusing lens, but instead a white dome diffuser over the COB, so how does the focusing function even work? This light includes a specially designed stepped reflector that has variable angle tapers in it. It reflects light differently depending on where the COB sits inside the reflector, and that's how you get a more focused beam angle. So the zoom knob simply moves the light source back and forth in the reflector, and that's what gives you the change. It is kind of backwards because when you zoom the light all the way out, the beam angle actually gets wider, and it doesn't really make a difference. I just thought it was interesting because, like, physics and stuff. So just to be very clear, you have to use the included reflector if you want to use the focusing function. Most COB lights have a beam angle around 110 degrees, but without the reflector on, this light has a beam angle greater than 180 degrees. This can actually be pretty useful because you'll get less of a hot spot using pretty much any modifier, and it'll give you more even coverage in things like big spherical lanterns. Godox claims a beam angle range of 20 to 65 degrees, and I'm not quite sure it's that big of a difference, but there is an obvious change when you zoom fully in and out. The last thing I noticed is when you have this fully zoomed in at its tightest beam angle, there is a greater difference between brightness in the center of the light circle and the outer edges. So compared to when it's at its widest beam angle, there is a slightly greater hot spot. Overall, the zoom functionality is not what you would get with a typical Fresnel lens, but it is still useful, and one of the reasons I like the dome diffuser is that it helps blend all the different color LEDs together before you send it out to hit your subject. As far as brightness and color accuracy goes, the SZ150R is pretty much what you would expect from Godox. There is one huge upgrade here that, if it wasn't included, I was ready to take a vow of celibacy against all future Godox lights. The biggest upside to this light, in my opinion, is the included green magenta tint control. Not only can you adjust the color temperature, but also the tint to match this light perfectly to any other lights in your scene, or to bring the tint to perfectly neutral, at least theoretically. During my initial testing, the tint control wasn't actually strong enough to bring this light completely to neutral, which was troubling. I got in touch with Godox and they confirmed that they'll fix this soon in a future firmware upgrade, which is good because without it, it's almost borderline useless. Make sure you check back here on the pinned comment to see if they've strengthened the tint adjustment before buying this light. The more lights that add tint adjustment in the future, the better, because it eliminates any problems with matching different lights from different brands, or just different lights from different production runs of the same brand. Another bonus with a Bowens mount RGB light is that you can get super soft colored light compared to something like a tube light or a pocket light, which is a little harsher. As far as photometrics go, I measured this light with my Sekonic C800 and got the following results. The SZ150R claims a color temperature range of 2800 to 6500 Kelvin, and I got 2703 Kelvin on the low end and 6590 Kelvin on the high end, so it's within 100 Kelvin on both sides, which is great. For the brightness, I got 3240 lux at the minimum color temperature and 4070 lux at the maximum color temperature. The Godox SL150W Mark II comes in at 6780 lux, so the SZ150R is about 2/3 to 1 full stop dimmer. And that's pretty darn good considering it's the same wattage, but is also bicolor and RGB capable, and has a dome diffuser built in. It's also around 1/3 stop brighter than the 60-watt Godox lights like the ML60. With the reflector attached and the light set to full flood at 5500 Kelvin, I got a brightness of 20,100 lux. At full zoom, I got 31,600 lux, so you get a little over 1/2 of a stop more brightness at the tighter beam angle, at least in the very center of the light circle. Taking a look at the color rendering scores, this light is unsurprisingly a little lower than the daylight balanced Godox lights. I got a CRI and TLCI of 95.4 and 95 at the minimum color temperature, and 94.8 and 93 at the maximum color temperature. And at 5500 Kelvin, I got 96 for the CRI and 95 for the TLCI. I got an SSI of 71 versus the daylight standard and 80 versus the tungsten standard. Most daylight balanced lights come in around 72 to 74 SSI, and most bicolor lights measure in the 82 to 85 range versus the tungsten standard. But it is common to see these numbers drop a little as you start adding more LED colors into a fixture. Some of that has to do with using slightly less color accurate LEDs in favor of brightness. Overall, you shouldn't have any color rendering issues with this light, and the more important feature is the green magenta adjustment, as long as Godox dials that in as promised. If you want to see all the measurements I took for this light, I'll have a link in the description to my light comparison tool. It uses real-world measurements instead of manufacturer-provided specs, that way you can fairly compare lights from any brand. The SZ150R takes notes from the SL Mark II series when it comes to the fan noise. It has the same fan off feature, so you can run this light at 35% brightness or less in CCT mode, or 75% brightness or less in HSI mode. 35% brightness in CCT mode is still bright enough to be used as a key light with a big softbox in most indoor scenarios. And 75% brightness in HSI mode is negligible compared to 100%, and from a practical standpoint, it's basically full power. When the fan does turn on, it's similar to most of the newer Godox lights, meaning it's nice and quiet. I'll play samples of this fan compared to some other popular lights, and you can compare them for yourself. I did boost the audio of all these clips the same, just so you can hear them better. Overall, you should have no issues with the fan noise from this light tainting your audio unless you're working in some very sound sensitive scenarios. I already mentioned that this light has DMX control, but you can also use the RCR9 remote or the Godox Light app. The Godox Light app is new and it's different from the Godox Photo app, which is used to control the VL and UL series of lights. It doesn't come with the RCR9 remote, but it is the same remote used to control the LC500R wand lights. Right on the remote, there are some color presets for quick changes or to get good starting points for customization. The one thing missing from the RCR9 remote is the tint control, so you'll have to do that on the back of the light or in the mobile app. The new Godox Light app is a step in the right direction because one thing that Godox lacks is a unified system to control all of their lights. The app is a bit finicky and I did notice some typos, but it does work, and I think if they continue to develop that and add that control to all of their future lights, that will be amazing. It's got CCT, RGB, and HSI mode, as well as gel filter mode to match Lee and Roscoe filters. It also has color picker mode, which is cool, and you can sample colors from an image. The color picker mode is pretty hit or miss right now, and the gel filter mode just doesn't work at all, but we should see those improved in future updates. This light has the usual Godox special effects, and one thing that I'd like to see in the future is customizable colors for all the special effects. And the beauty of this light being firmware upgradable means that that's not out of the question. Overall, this light is flexible enough to be used as a key light with a big softbox, or as a colored accent light in the background, and it is bright enough to flood an entire room with color. If you pair this light with a couple Godox LC500R light wands, you'll have one of the most versatile kits available. The SZ150R is $559, which isn't cheap, but for everything this light can do, it'll be up to you to decide whether it's worth it. If price wasn't a factor at all, I think I'd rather have a few of these lights than any other Godox COB, not just for their full color capabilities, but for the fact that you can dial these in precisely to match any other lights. Before you go, leave a comment and let me know if you think the price difference is worth it for these lights, and if you're as hyped as I am on the tint control. Links are in the description if you want to check these lights out further. That's it for now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.